Enigma depravatio est. Enigma crudelitas est.
And just weeks ago, for the first time since President Truman established the Air Force, more than 70 years earlier, we created a brand new branch of the United States Armed Forces. It's called the Space Force. Very important. We must remember that America has always been a frontier nation. Now we must embrace the next frontier. America's manifest destiny in the stars. I am asking Congress to fully fund the Artemis program to ensure that the next man and the first woman on the moon will be American astronauts, using this as a launching pad to ensure that America is the first nation to plant its flag on Mars.
Well, happy Valentine's Day, and happy birthday, Alita, if we can call it that. It may not have been a happy one, though. Just as Alita's birth was born into struggle, so too was her movie born into struggle on that cold, Martian-feeling February day. That we, the Alita Army, are continuing to struggle to get the sequel that the movie so deserves. So keep up the campaign to make history with the first true live-action anime to ever get a sequel, and so it can become the next Star Wars. That's why this movie is so important. It sets a major precedent for future live-action anime that are taken seriously. And if we get news of the sequel, who knows, maybe we the Alita Army could send Alita home to Mars on one of SpaceX's rockets to push for the Alita trilogy and possibly a saga. Now that would be an Alita challenge. Mars Chronicle is that gory, disturbing, thrilling, adventurous enigma. What can it tell us of our future on Mars? When we think of colonizing Mars, we don't think it becoming the Syria of the solar system, which that is what Mars has become in the world of Battle Angel Alita. Then again, Mars is the god of war, so I think Yukito found it fitting that this would be a war-torn planet. In one of my videos on Alita, I introduced the Venus hypothesis. Now I'm going to introduce the Martian conundrum that we will face, just as in Alita's world. If it's one thing that Battle Angel Alita has taught us, it is that the future is grim. Hope of a new world order where we're all united with one world government, one world language and religion, culture, race, can be thrown out of balance, God willing, with one little rock being hurled to Earth, setting the stage for evolutionary divergence. The last little rock that God hurled to us was around 10,000 years ago, and that actually benefited us, that gave birth to civilization. But the next one could scatter us away from our Garden of Eden, that is our planet, to uncharted Edens like Mars. Just because a civilization advances technologically doesn't necessarily mean they will advance morally. We could evolve to be Sith or Jedi. Harnessing technology and possibly supernatural forces doesn't necessarily mean that we will evolve to become an angelic transhumanist being like Alita. We could become more of a Zapan. Now when we go to Mars, we will become more cyborg-like. Every time an astronaut puts on a spacesuit, technically that's becoming a cyborg. In the broader sense, driving a car makes you a cyborg. Right now, cybernetics is more external, but it could become more internal to our bodies. But what is the body but merely a vessel for the soul? Alita's eyes could be a window to our future on Mars. Some evolutionary biologists argue we will evolve to have larger eyes on Mars after a couple million years due to luminosity being lower and living under artificial light in terraforming Boldigan canopy cities. Although Yukito has it covering the whole planet, in reality it'll probably start out with domed cities, creating little gardens here and there. They also argue we will evolve to use carotenoids, which will come from more vegetative diet, for it could be a long time before we start mass producing meat, and possibly more vegetarian culture could emerge on Mars in its early periods. This could darken our skin to be more of a tan orange color. They also argue due to lower gravity we will evolve stockier and taller bodies with larger heads and larger chests. So pretty much our idea of an alien is a reflection of what we think we might look like in the future, judging by the environmental determinisms on Mars and looking at certain groups here on Earth, such as those living in the Himalayas to those living in the Amazon. Although this is not factoring in cybernetic enhancements. Now, the likelihood of terraforming Mars is very slim actually. There's a lot of scientists aren't very optimistic about it. More than likely we're going to be living under the Boldigan canopies for a very long time. So I think Yukito is a little too optimistic, despite his dystopian world on Mars and Earth. It could take at least 100,000 years before we ever have a chance of truly terraforming Mars. And Yukito has shown that geopolitics doesn't go away just because you advance. The Space Force is a sign of things to come. The tool that is war is not going away. Mars in Alita's world is a war-torn planet due to competition for terraforming resources. So I would put Yukito's timeline of Mars Chronicle to be more realistic. It would have to be 50,000 years in the future, not just a couple hundred years. Now, this idea of making the future is now is a strategy that a lot of sci-fi authors adopt in order to make it feel more relatable and make it easier to write up. As Jaya Nice Day has shown in his videos on Mars Chronicle, I too don't see the logic of adopting this ancient mystery treasure hunt adventure if we're only talking about a couple hundred years in the past that Yoko and Erica are hunting for these so-called ancient treasures. So to make it more believable, Yukito should have put Alita's world far into the future if you wanted to adopt this idea of Earth being the lost Garden of Eden with other biblical references, such as Zalem and Iron City are actually part of Yukito's idea of the Tower of Babel, which Alita saves Zalem and Iron City from collapsing onto each other. Now this case, Dr. Ito, it might not be engineering that saves Zalem and Iron City, but magic. Kind of. It's a little blurry. This tower extends to the space city of Teferis, so pretty much, yeah, it's literally reaching up into the heavens of space, and that's what Yukito's going for here. Now, Mars Chronicles seems to be more about Erica than about Yoko or Alita. Both are war orphans, with Alita having more of a mysterious origin, and Erica being kind of the big sister watching over Yoko. Erica has more of a tragic family life. She dreams of having a perfect family, but her real family is far from normal, pretty much almost abusive, to the point that Erica just loses it. So when Erica sees Yoko, she kind of wants to be the mother that she never had to Yoko. So Erica matures very quickly, but this comes with a moral price. Whereas Alita literally kind of becomes a battle angel, Erica starts to drift to the Sith, making her a little more of a battle demon. And this is due to the people that she surrounds herself by, but she doesn't have much of a choice due to the circumstances that they were born into. So they are a victim to the planet's evil aura. In their early life on Mars, Alita gets split from Erica, and Erica goes on to a gruesome adventure with some shady characters, trying to find a cure for Baron Mustard. What we learn from Baron Mustard's tragic infliction reflects how Yukito may be trying to take extreme circumstances to shock the reader into becoming numb, like Nova, to these gruesome situations. Indifference and apathy can break the innocence of someone like Erica, but not maybe fully in Yoko. It also makes us question, do these situations reflect how we view people, and if they even are people, and how they will inevitably become? It kind of dabbles into issues like abortion and euthanasia and how we view humans as disposable. It's also similar to how the Joker believes that it only takes one really bad day to alter a person into insanity. It also reflects how karma will always be there to destroy immortality that someone like Baron Muster seeks. Instead, it's the innocent characters like Yoko who may gain immortality, hence the title of Angel. Keep in mind the genre of Battle Angel Alita is a type of immortal literature which was a fad in the 80s and adopted into the cyberpunk genre. So they find a mysterious crystal disc, which Yukito might have gotten an idea or inspired by the crystal skull. And they find a mysterious staff and a book, which helps them lead to this supposed cursed treasure of Mars, which is the disc. And with the staff, I bet Yukito gets the idea from the Egyptian Wa scepter. And Yukito even brings up the face of Mars, of Cydonia. Now this opens up a whole ancient alien can of worms. Now I'm not saying it's Alita's, but it's Alita. So I'm going to bet that Yukito knows of the author of Zachariah Sitchin. Now I haven't finished reading the rest of Mars Chronicle, but I would guess that Yukito may be bringing up the idea that Mars was inhabited before humans, and he even brings up the conspiracy idea that the Nazis may have reached Mars and had help. So he's definitely dipping into the occult ideas with a technological perspective. Now, could Mars have actually had life in the past? Well, no. And here's why. Now, I guess I shouldn't say no, but the current hypothesis on Mars is that Mars did have oceans covering 20% of the planet with a maximum depth of 5,000 feet. But this was over 3 billion years ago, which may have lasted for about 1 billion years the most. But this was during the phase of the planet's cooling after the condensing of the core. But what caused the formation of water was not necessarily due to the sun warming up Mars, but Mars's core was still very hot, just as Earth's was. So water was bubbling up and condensing. More than likely, cellular life did form, and possibly even small life forms at the level of the Cambrian explosion. But Mars cooled too quickly for the formation of complex evolutionary terrestrial life forms. Possibly Mars reached the level of small amphibians and reptiles and fish, but never reached the level of like mammals and dinosaurs. Keep in mind the sun's luminosity over 3 billion years ago was at least 10% cooler, so the radiant heat of the sun was not causing the water to form but the warmth of Mars's core and atmosphere. Mars is only about half the size of Earth and was farther away from the sun, so it cooled quicker than the Earth. It's far more likely that Venus could have been just like Earth, as I explained in my video on the Venus hypothesis. But Mars does have some prospect for the future. In about 500 million years from now, Earth will become too warm. As the sun increases and expands, its luminosity increases. But for Mars, this could be beneficial. As Earth gets hotter, Mars will start to thaw out, and this could restart its core. And with the attempts of terraforming by us, this could also leave some remnants of microbial life that could take hold and be dormant until the time is right for it to bloom. Although our terraforming attempts may be a failure and we will just go extinct, but the leftover microbial life could still survive, making Mars the next Garden of Eden. So we may be long gone, but it's possible that remnants of our attempts of terraforming may be fossilized, and future Martians will look back and see that there may have been a lost civilization. More than likely they'll figure out that this civilization came from Earth. In 500 million years from now, Earth will still have life, but it will be more of a desert and only rugged animals and plants could survive. But Earth will be actually more habitable to them than Mars is habitable to us right now. It will be far more likely that this future Martian civilization will attempt to go back to the Garden of Eden of this lost civilization that they may discover, assuming Venus wasn't the first Garden of Eden. So this puts things in perspective for authors like Yukito should look back on. But we won't know for sure until we actually go to Mars. It's possible within that 1 billion years that complex life could have enough time to evolve under the power of Mars' core and its atmosphere, shifting the factors of what makes the habitable zone. Assuming this wasn't a bombardment period, which more than likely it was. The small size of Mars could speed up the evolutionary process though. So I think Yukito could have adopted this idea, with the face of Mars of Cydonia being a relic of a lost civilization over 2 billion years ago. But this could complicate things. Now, Yukito brings up another theme relating to the conditions of Mars, and that is mutations. Due to high levels of radiation, that these mutations could lead to evolutionary divergence in our species, assuming we survive these mutations, which could first start out being very negative with a lot of suffering. But with the help of genetic engineering and cybernetics, these detrimental mutations could be controlled, giving birth to new types of transhumanists, challenging our idea of what it means to be human. So if we get the trilogy, I sure hope Robert Rodriguez does not take these themes and waters them down. I'm fine with it being PG-13 so long as you still have these main themes, which are very important in cyberpunk. And the mystery of Yoko could make us ponder what it means to be made in the image and likeness of an angel. And I'll let the god of Pokemon sum it up to our little battle angel.
I see now that the circumstances of one's birth are irrelevant. It is what you do with the gift of life that determines who you are.
This has been the Enigma Seeker. Keep seeking those Alitas.
depravatio est.